Well, good evening, and welcome to the Talk and Sip, which is not Talk and Sip tonight, but in review. And we're moving away until Saturday already because maybe you don't want to face what today is going to bring, which is in the next hour or so, we'll have an idea as to what the results of the election is going to be for 2024, July the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite you. I want to thank you so much for joining. To those joining me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and also TikTok. Thank you very much. Well, tonight is a very interesting night. Um, we're just going to be looking at just outcome of the hurricane Beryl and the Caribbean, and leading into the elections which is presently underway from 7 to 10 p.m. tonight, and at 5 to 10 and around 10 o'clock we'll be able to get the exit poll as to who is going to be the next Prime Minister of the UK. Will it be Rishi Sunak continuing, or will it be Sir Keir Starmer, or will it be Nigel Farage creating an upset, or will it be Ed Davey or so? But without further ado, let me just bring in Gary, and let's just get the ball rolling. And thank you very much for that. Thank you, Gary. Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm good. It's good to be back on the Sylbourne Sydial show, especially at
That's
such a time as this.
I'm sorry.
Especially at such a time as this. Very
Especially
good.
especially at such a time like this.
Yeah.
Especially at such a time like this, we are in a very crucial, and we are in a pivotal time. You know, at this time regarding what's going on in the world, what's going on in the UK with this election, and also what's going on in Jamaica or the Caribbean with Hurricane Beryl. You know. Um,
Yes.
one of the things, unfortunately, is that when you have these elections in the media houses, they try not to promote or speak too much about it until 10 o'clock. Until 10 o'clock, in a way of not trying to encourage people to vote any particular way. While of course it's a small station, but follow through with the whole process at the same time. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So so how are you? How is the weather, and how is everything in the UK? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the weather for us here up in the middle of the country, central England, as they would say, it hasn't been too bad. It was a bit
Yes.
nippy. The we noticed that the temperature had dropped a bit yesterday evening, night. But it's been very, very good tonight or today. I mean, very
Mm.
nice weather today. Very nice
Yes.
weather.
Yes. 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 Well. 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 I guess. Well, of course, you'd have voted already because 10 o'clock you won't be able to go and vote again. I guess you have voted already for the winning party, isn't it?
Yes, yes, I have.
you've, you've voted already for the winning party. Is it? Is it?
Uh,
I find this election very interesting. Very interesting. This election. And while I put my vote where I know where I put my vote, but I'm so interested to find the polls versus the polls. You know
mm,
what the
yes,
polls have been saying versus what the actual poll is going to be. I'm also
yes,
looking to see what will reform be. Will the votes that they have, will it translate into seats? I look to
mm,
see if there'll be any supermajority or majority by Labour. I look to see if there's going to be a possibility of any coalition, you know, because one of the
yes,
things they were saying was that one third of the voters haven't decided yet. And also, I got to understand that the turnout has been very good. There's a high turnout so far at the time when they were looking at what goes on over the years. So I think at 10 o'clock it will be very interesting to find um, what's going to happen. As well. Yeah.
well, um, it's going to be interesting. I think do think it's an interesting time that we are living in, really,
Mm,
because all right, we know that the Conservative Party is going to take a hit. We know that. How big a
yes.
hit? We don't know. We are
Yeah.
aware that the Labour Party are going to get some gains. That's what we are told. How much
Yes.
gain? We don't know. But then what's on the periphery are two parties in my mind. One is the Lib Dems, and the other one is the Reformed Party. We don't know how much the Reform Party is going to gain, if any. And again, we don't know if the Lib Dems is going to be the second, is going to take the place of this of the opposition. So
Mm,
there are a few things up in the air which only the Lord knows. Um,
yes.
but we are here waiting frantically, or waiting with bated breath to see exactly how things are going to pan out.
Yeah. Let me just check something here. If Chris from Jamaica is here. Sir Christopher Malcolm, are you there? Let me see.
I am. I'm listening. I'm listening.
Oh, you're listening.
Yes.
Oh, so you're not ready to come in as yet, then, is it?
I don't know what you want me to comment on.
well, well, we're in interesting time, but I think while you're here, because I've invited another person, if anything, from Jamaica as well. We have
Uh,
just had the onslaught of I don't know if that's the right word, of Hurricane Beryl that hit Jamaica. Well, well, today's Thursday. Yesterday, and there's been some sort of impact. I don't know if you can give us a sort of overview based on your perspective, being on the rock there. Are you still fixing the roof or catching out water or something like that?
it depends on where you are in Jamaica. If you're
Yes,
in Kingston and some other areas, and depending on also where in Kingston you are, you may
yes,
get the impression that there was nothing at all, not even a heavy breeze blow. But if you're
yes.
in other parts of Jamaica, such as southern St. Elizabeth in the Treasure Beach area, Comapen, back into southern Manchester, into Alligator Pond, I understand, even into parts of Clarendon and so on, parts of Manchester, you will know that there was a hurricane and a very real one. So we have
Yes,
heard unofficially so far, because as you know, it's still early days, so the assessments are not
agree.
completed, that we
Mm,
have had in the area of Treasure Beach and so on, perhaps up to 70 or so percent of houses being impacted. And that include guest houses and so on that were there. And they were impacted by heavy wind. So a lot of persons lost roofs. Most of those impacted lost roofs. And then you had the water damage from heavy and continuous rain as well. In addition, for some of the properties on the seaside, they had storm surges, which caused problems during Beryl, but the
mm,
problems, as I understand, started even before Beryl.
yes,
So it really is a tale of two cities, or a tale of different places, probably is the better way to put it, as to where you were when the storm hit. And it appeared that the way the storm happened, most of it stayed out to sea, it appears. And it sort of skirted the island, going in and into giving some sort of eye contact in that southern St. Elizabeth area, which then caused a lot of problems along that shoreline.
yeah. Have there been any? I've heard about one person was being the river jumped fell in the river or so. Has there been any deaths or anything that we've heard of?
I've heard so far about two deaths, including one where a tree fell on a roof and caused the death of someone who was in the house. So I've
Mm,
heard those, but again, it is still early days and people are
Early
still doing
days.
assessments. And the problem with the early days is that the JPS had reported earlier that about 60% of the island or their users were without electricity. And with that, a lot of persons also were having sort of sporadic or no internet or other services, telephone or other such services. So getting, real-time reporting and accurate information as it happens has been quite difficult. So
Yeah.
we expect that it will take a few days yet for you to get a full reporting as to what has happened, including how many, if any, persons died as a direct result of the storm, of the
And it
hurricane.
and it went down to a category 4, I understand as well.
And may have hit at even lower, may have, but
Mm.
again, all of those things are relative. And I like to say though that whether it is category 3, 4, or whatever, is perhaps not even the most important thing. I remembered several years ago, for example, when there was major devastation in St. Lucia. It was caused by what may not even have been at hurricane strength. It was, I think, a tropical storm that simply sat over the island for several days and just poured inches and inches and inches of rain, and that washed away bridges, and all the waterways were inundated and everything, and that created no ends of problems. So these storm systems have a lot of damage that can come both by wind as well as by rain, and then of course affect how they impact the infrastructure. And sometimes, very often, the greater impact is not so much the wind but the rain, and the rain can last for several days after even, or can sit depending on how fast the storm moved. Fortunately for us, Beryl was a fast moving storm,
Yes.
fortunately. But then it's funny because they say being fast moving also means that if it hits, you could also get a greater intensity of damage at the point
Yeah.
of hitting. But then you may not then have the intensity by reference to damage caused by rainfall. So it really is a tale of many wonders and nature playing itself out in all kinds of different ways. But for now, we certainly, I'm speaking to you from Kingston. From this end, we're having good sunshine and everything, and we're thankful for it. But knowing that there are many persons on the other side, I am myself from St. Elizabeth, and
Yes.
my old school, Monroe College, I sit on the school board there as well, and I know we have had significant damage. Again, much of it still not officially confirmed yet because of the state of the telephone connections and so on. But we do know that there has been significant damage, and it has been widely reported online. Irish and Trish, for example, have
Yeah.
gone out, and Irish and Chin rather have gone out and had reports of that, and a number of other persons have. But it's been serious in some places. And we
Yeah.
heard, even in the healthcare sector, we have heard that Mandeville Hospital, for example, had significant damage done to it as well. And the reports again continue to come in. Yes,
I'm sure
I see that as a place I know well. I know that quadrangle very well.
that and
So
that's cool there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
But somehow it is felt that this is not, well, it's not as bad as maybe Gilbert, if anything, isn't it?
It depends on where you go, because the persons
Depend.
down in
Yeah.
South St. Elizabeth tell you that
Yes.
the effects that they have felt and seen certainly would be worse than Ivan and worse than anything that they've seen down there as well. So again, Gilbert had a different side of the island that's impacted, and Gilbert came to us much more directly than this did. This sort of gave us a glancing shot, but the
Yeah.
area that it glanced very well. So that is the way to describe it, I believe.
I'm seeing someone saying like that. They spoke with the mayor down in Portland. They who said the damage in Ricky Portland Cottage is bad, with roofs off and some houses down. But they are preparing those assessment reports. As you rightly say, everything is now is in the process of finding these assessment. Some persons still in shelter, and food from MLS being distributed. And and one of the things that I saw was the mayor of Kingston, um, what what was it, having these shelters, trying to get a lot of the homeless persons in shelters as well, in view of the pending hurricane. yesterday. So, well, as you said, we'll see the outcome of it. Somebody just said on TikTok, I wish the news did more coverage, but I saw some sort of video which was zeroing on Flatbridge, zeroing on in Kingston there, halfway tree. I was looking at halfway tree and it didn't look like it was halfway tree, but a couple of persons said yes, it was halfway tree. Gary, anything you want to say, Gary?
No, no, no,
Gary,
no. I'm listening to you guys.
yes, yes, yes.
Can
But
you
but
hear me?
but yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. But anyway, Chris, um, Chris Malcolm is a deputy dean, and the attorney in deputy dean of the University of West Indies, Dr. Malcolm, Christopher Malcolm, and I brought in Chris because we're on the threshold of something big in the UK, and I know Chris has been following what's happening with the elections here. Um, and I think in about half an hour time we'll be able to get an indication of the exit polls to see where things are going. Based on your overview and looking like we from the outside looking in on Jamaica, you're from Jamaica looking out on the UK. What's your take on how do you see this unfolding?
It,
Not like you're a prophet.
I mean, I actually was in England for one election. You might tell your guests, the listeners rather, that I did both of my two postgraduate degrees in England, an LLM and my PhD as well at the University of London. I was out in East End, Center for
Okay.
Commercial Law Studies. So I
Yes.
spent a bit of time there, and that one of them was during one of the elections. That
Yes.
one that Gordon Brown lost. So
Yes.
I remember that one. But looking on, the polls appear to suggest that the Labour should come home handily. However, it
Mm.
appears, though, from history that the conservatives are better at winning elections than Labour happen to be, at least in recent years anyway. That they
Yes.
are better at organizing, and we saw that happen with Corbyn. We saw that happen with Miliband, where, from all indications, the Conservatives should have lost, but somehow they ended up winning. I don't know that the Conservatives will be as lucky this time. I really
Yes.
don't think so.
Mm.
But so I was listening to you earlier with Gary, and I think the real question may well be how bad a loss it is for the
Mm.
Conservatives rather
Yeah.
than whether or not they end up losing. And I
Mm.
mean, just looking on quite objectively, I find it strange, and perhaps it was a bit of political naivety, but I don't think he should have had it, that Rishi Sunak called the election at the time he did. And
Yeah.
my looking on suggests to me that the party was not ready. And I
Mm.
find it strange that you have the capacity to call an election. You're under no obvious threat for
Obligation.
calling
Yeah.
election.
Yes.
You end up calling it, and from what I have heard, there were persons within the Conservative Party who may have even intended to make themselves available who are simply not ready. Because
Mm.
for whatever reason, from center, there was not a sufficient effort made to put their house in order and to ensure that appropriate arrangements were in place to be able to
Yes.
secure a victory. And I think that is, at the very best, naive, if not something much worse.
Mm.
And I think at the end of the day, if Rishi Sunak were to lose, I think the tradition is going to be that he's going to step aside anyway. But I think
Yes.
not only should he step aside, he should step aside with his head hung very low if he ends
Mm.
up losing, because he will come out realizing that he made a very bad call if he ends up losing because of
Mm.
his own failure to put his own house in order.
Yeah, that's a good point there about putting his house in order because a lot of people are on the back foot of that and trying to get candidates in different places, so and what is happening is that it created this thing that even Nigel Farage was saying. Well, Nigel Farage quickly turned it around with Richard Tice for the reform because he said it was too quick for him to really get in the election game. But then after a while, he realized that, and the pressure was on him that he had to quickly change his mind and sort of push forward for this particular election. I do find though, one of the things that I do find is the talk about a super majority. Let us stop um, Labor from having a super majority. And when I hear that, Gary and Chris, it seems to me like, is there already a concession of defeat
No,
indirectly?
I mean, I would agree totally with what Chris. Um, if I'm allowed to call you Chris, or should I call you Dr. Malcolm? Which one?
No. Chris is fine, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Chris, I would agree what Chris is saying, and in addition to that, I think what Rishi and I think the country as well as the Conservative Party. You see, there's a few things that was taking place in the party. If you watch very carefully and listen to what is going on there, the Conservative Party is in a state of disarray because we've
Mm,
seen countless amount of sitting MPs, Conservative MPs, that either resign or switch party, um, or whatever, because they didn't. I feel, and as I don't know if Chris has been listening to the show, to to previous shows at times, but I mean we have kind of said that Rishi, um, yes, he was not under any pressure. I don't think anybody was giving him any pressure to call the election for this time. But I
mm,
feel that there were those within the party that didn't want Rishi to be the prime minister because of who he is culturally. He was not elected by the country to be the prime minister. He was elected by his own peers, and it wasn't even everybody anyway that within the Conservative Party that elected him. However, I feel that he's done a very good job. I think he's done well to hold the party to some extent together in as much as what's been going on. Plus, to put the whole economy together. Because when Liz Truss, I believe, when she decided to um, to turn things upside down, he had to come in and kind of straighten things up, which he's done. I'm not saying that he's been perfect or or his policies are 100% correct, but I think he has brought credibility back into the office of prime minister
mm.
because one of what Boris, with all of his genius scores that may have had or whatever, he, I mean, people didn't really take him seriously. And then when Liz Truss came in and did what she did,
Yes.
obviously, Rishi had to come in and do something to bring some kind of credibility back, which I believe he has done. And the party has not stood behind Rishi. So I think at the same time, that's why he has called the election as it is, even though he was not forced. Nobody was forcing him to, but I think he wanted to bring it because people were just not giving him the support that I think that he needed to do, or that he needed. He didn't have the support which he needed, so he did what he did. I don't
But if
know,
I
Chris, if I would say that he has to hold his head down. I don't know. I can't see that, but I think that it may not be held high, but at least if he holds his head straight,
Mhm.
so to speak, then I think that
let,
he's
let,
done. I think he's done well.
let me comment a bit there, Gary. Let me tell you what sort of affects my thinking.
Uh,
I heard Rishi in a comment saying that he effectively is an accidental prime minister, right?
okay.
Mm.
Now, for him to have made such a statement, I can't understand anybody. given the circumstances that led to him being a leader of that party. There is no one anywhere, certainly I hope not in the UK, who believes that he sat idly by without doing what he did to try to get Boris out and effectively Liz Truss out and so on to get into the position. So for him to be trying to tell people that he is an accidental prime minister is to stretch the ambit of gullibility. That's one. Secondly, he knew or has been around in politics for long enough, young as he is, that once you get into leadership at that level, it is ongoing fights that you have with those who are for you, those who are against you, and everything else. And I understand that he felt the need to call the election to get his own mandate. But it
Mm,
is foolish to seek to get a mandate in circumstances where the possibility of victory is as low, the probability, let me not even say possibility, anything is possible, but let us use the language of probability. The probability of victory was so low that it was better off to hold on for a while and then try to shore things up. Perhaps he would have bargained to say that the longer I hold on, the greater the forces against me will rise. I understand that. But it is also true that calling it now, and at the time he has done so at a time where, save for some miracle, which you and I don't know anything about at this time, it is not whether he loses, it's about how badly he loses. And I'm saying that if he loses badly, with all that baggage being taken to the table and weighed and considered, there is no way he can hold his head high, not as a politician, not knowing the cut and thrust of politics, not knowing the dirty game of politics for what it is, and all the other matters relating to politics. He should have known better. And at the very least, he should have ensured that he got his caucus together, certainly of persons who were likely, and he should have done his own background checks and whatever else he needed to do to ensure that there was a state of readiness within
mm,
his party for an election. The last you should do is call an election where your very party members are wondering what the hell has happened. We're not even aware of this. We don't know what is happening. We have not put our house in
mm.
order. We want to run, but we have not put our personal house in order. So there's no way we can jump into the fray at this time and so on. Why should any leader put his own party in that position?
Yes, yes. It's going to be a lot of review, and this is where it's a massive gamble. I would say this is a gamble which I believe Rishi Sunak took in the rain. Some are saying that the boat policy with the Rwanda bit, um, in a way they're saying, hang on a second, why didn't you wait to see if it was able to get off the ground? Than to actually call election now. And what he's saying is that once election is called and if they win, bam, these guys will be going to Rwanda. People are saying, why didn't you actually wait until November and get that policy off and get these people on the boat to see if one can actually get it organized? But the other thing, Chris and Gary, there's something happening also around the world. You're seeing something happening in France with the rise of the far right with Le Pen. And you're seeing Macron call a snap election, trying to sort of silence it. But the first round of the votes showed Le Pen leading. And then what you're seeing also in the States with America, you're seeing the rise of the Trumpsters, with the demise of Biden, even though they're trying to get Biden to maybe step aside to get somebody vibrant in the whole game. You see there's a shift, and then reform, in the UK is, well, this is it, we're going to see what happens tonight. Reform could be rising, which is more leaning to a far right. Is there some shifting in the dynamics, you would say, Chris?
I I don't know that there's a rise of the Trumpsters. The Trumpsters have remained Trumpsters. So
Yeah.
what we see is a situation where, depending on what happens in the Democratic Party, you could have a falling away of support from Biden for sure. And what is clear is that Trump, if Trump remains having the support of the Trumpsters, and Biden has a falling away, particularly of the independents, he will likely lose. And I have been on the record for a while now of saying that whether you love him or hate him, support him or not, the likelihood is that Trump is going to be the next president of the US. That is a position I've held for a while, and I think it is likely to be played out in that way. Again, unless something significant happens between now and then. But getting back to the rise of the far right, say in France and so on, I think what is happening is that what you're seeing is that as the societies become more and more under stress, France in particular, because of all the problems it's having with people out in Africa and so on, and
Yeah.
persons seeing their daily existence, being whittled away in terms of what they're able to do. Then you have more and more persons feeling and wanting to blame somebody. So you
Mhm.
blame the immigrant, you blame this and you blame that. And so the right is using that nationalism fervor to say, get on board. We are the ones to ensure that you don't have people coming in and taking your jobs. In a very cynical way, I'll say this though,
Mm.
that perhaps the best thing that could happen for Africa and a number of other persons, myself included, is for the far right to do very well in France and elsewhere. Because I think if the far right does very well in France and they carry through with a number of the initiatives they're threatening to carry through with, then the people in Gabon and wherever else it is out in Africa and so on will realize that the time for us to continue to provide support on the basis that we have some level of linkage, paternal or maternal, whatever you want to call it, to France, and that there are our heritage lies there and our heritage is connected there and so on, would have gone. And they will now have to take much greater steps to
Mhm.
work together across the continent and to build their own nationalistic fervor. And for me, perhaps the world is at a stage now where we need to see more of that happening. So I would say, much as looking at it from a democratic perspective, if you want to think of it in the context of France, in the context of the in and outer quotes first world, in the
Yeah.
context of Europe, you might say that is bad. I don't know that if you look at it from the context of Africa and the persons who have been suffering the result of these Eurocentric policies and what they could possibly do if it causes them to then look more internally and to develop their own resources through their own resilience, that it is necessarily a bad thing. And in fact, I think the time has come for that to happen, to force them into their own self reliance and what they can do without thinking that France is ever a place to look to or to run to. Similarly with Trump, if Trump
Mm.
rises and he carries through on a lot of the initiatives that the ultra conservatives might want, then you might find that people, instead of seeing the US and so on as places that are ready and willing and able to take you, persons will now have to start thinking much more progressively of the South dialogue and of other initiatives that
Mm.
can allow them to look more internally and look differently in places which may be more supportive of their inherent needs rather
Yeah.
than the perceived ones that have been created by societies up north, societies in the in and outer quotes developed world, who will always see us and continue to see us as nothing but providers of primary goods and services for their own benefit and to our own detriment.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Interesting perspective that you mentioned there, and especially regarding the far right. One of the reasons why even France and why Macron is actually saying let's get the far right out, mean to say get them out and get the Democrats in, because the far right is being seen as what they call it, misogynist and all these sort of racist bit, and it is deemed to be the anti group which are not liked that much. But at the same time, what Nigel Farage said, these people are people who speak. They're actually trying to get their voice heard. And because you guys are not letting them heard, and that is what is happening, whereby they're rising because people are actually shutting down that particular group. And one of the things, Chris, what we have found regarding, and that is why I'm so very cautious. I'm so much looking forward to this outcome of this election and to see the breakdown, because there's always this silent majority that always comes out in the end that ruffle the boat, because they're saying one third of the voters they were saying were undecided. And even some people that were polled, they were actually voted. They said yes, maybe it's another, but they said still they're not too sure. So there's this thing that this one third of this group will come out and make a dent in the whole process because they're not going to stand back and watch how Labour unfold in certain way. And that's one of the reasons why Labour is also playing it very safe, saying the right things and not rocking the boat too much. And many people are asking the question, will you rise tax? And all these different questions according to their policies, but they just stand back, yes, as much as possible. Yeah,
I mean, it's a good point to make, and looking from outside, say,
yeah,
I think, frankly, that one of the Keir Starmer has done well, I would say, in
yes,
trying to move to center. Yes,
yes,
after the Bernie, after not Bernie, after the Corbyn era, right?
yes,
But I really don't think either that Keir Starmer is the most charming and most adorable of politicians. I don't think so.
mm,
So I don't think it is that that he's the sort of individual who by himself can
mm,
turn an election. And it probably is a good thing because what you then have
yeah,
is that the people are supporting a movement
mm,
rather than a leader in Keir Starmer, right? And if you get that happening, in a sense, it doesn't become leader centric as it very often is, but it is
yeah,
also dangerous along the lines that you have just mentioned about the silent majority, because
mm,
or about that silent number, not necessarily majority,
yes,
but that silent number that could turn the election, that when they go out, they may on an election they say, well, in many minor mo, Keir or Rishi, who do I
mm,
prefer? Yeah? And if it is that they say, well, I don't mind what Labour is saying, but I don't really like Keir Starmer, then
mm,
that could have a significant impact. Because as I said, I don't think, just from my outside observation, that
yes,
he is the person who is persons will naturally gravitate to in the sort of way that people, for example, gravitated to Boris, whether you liked him or not. Again, he had a character about him which meant you could gravitate toward him even if you thought he was playing the Mickey, right? You would. But Keir, I'm not sure. Keir is much more the prosecutor who stands up and you see him in that role without necessarily see him as your next door neighbor friend kind of thing. That's the
yeah.
impression I get.
But is it that people are now saying they are tired of spin factors, persons with charismata, and looking for a serious person, a businessman looking like, in a sense, as though Keir Starmer is. They said he doesn't have that charismata, but they're seeing someone who is no frills.
And I'm saying that it may
Mm,
well be that we're getting to that stage, and that is why I'm saying this election will give
yes,
a good marker of whether people are genuinely more in support of party than they are in support of personality, right?
yes,
Or in support of policy more so than in support of personality. That is part of what makes me interested in this election
yes.
to see how it plays out in that regard.
Gary, you want to say something? I want to juxtapose something with Jamaica and with Chris. Gary, you have anything you want to say there based on
I
what
mean,
Chris just?
I don't know if this is where you would probably take it still, but listening to Chris, and I would agree with what Chris is saying. And I'm just thinking, we say that also about what is happening within the politics in Jamaica. Um, the is the country here, if I'm understanding you correctly, um, are, are, are you saying that the people here, the constituency, the country, is looking to see or will more accept what the party or what the government wants to bring more than the personality? Is that what you're saying, Chris? Is that what you're
I am
asking?
saying that it appears that that might be happening, and I'm
Mm,
saying the results that we see this evening will confirm whether that is in fact happening. Yes. And you
Mm.
asked about the juxtaposition with Jamaica, and I think a similar situation is playing out here. That
Yes.
what we may well see, if you recall, at the time of the parish council elections in Jamaica, which the PNP performed very well in. Whether they won or lost is a debate that is still going on, right? And I'm not
Yes.
going to get into that. But what is clear is that they performed exceptionally well under a Mark Golden, who was not necessarily seen as a big charismatic leader and the rest of it and so on. But what he has done is that he clearly has demonstrated a capacity for organization and for building of an organization that people are buying into. And that buying into, it could well be as a result of several factors. It could well be that people are more drawn to the policies or the personalities within the party that they have
Mm.
to deal with. Because remember, we do a constituency by constituency basis. So they may be
Yes.
more drawn to that. Or it may well be that they have got to a point of saying, we are tired of what we now have and we simply want change. But for
Mm.
whatever reason, there is something similarly at play in Jamaica, which will have to be assessed continually. There was some level of assessment that would have come out of the local government election. And I think a further assessment will have to
Mm.
be done after the general elections are held here in Jamaica. And I think you're going to have to do a similar level of engagement in England coming out of this election to determine whether people genuinely turned by reference to policy, turned by reference to performance or anticipated performance because the other party is not yet in, so it must be anticipated, or
Mm.
turned by reference to personalities. Because, but I'd also add in the same breath that Rishi himself has his own problems.
Yes.
Because whatever we may say, I'm not so sure that the majority of your traditional English conservative voters necessarily see Rishi as the person they ideally want at the top of their party.
Mm.
He got there. So when he said he was an accidental prime minister, I don't think it was accidental in the sense, there may be some truism to it. Not accidental in how he got to becoming prime minister, but accidental to say, I am the guy you choose not to like, but I'm still the guy who has been elevated to the top because I am the one that you need to have at the top.
Mm.
I don't know if that, and those are some of the dynamics again, which in due course, political historians and others will have to do a proper assessment of.
Yes.
I, I,
Yes.
I
Yes.
will, I will agree with that, Chris, because he couldn't be in this society not knowing the the, the British people don't want him there because he's an Asian. I think that, to me, that is telling. I think that is quite telling because I mean they've never been in this situation before. There's never been uh, um, a person of color in that position. It's always been um, an English person, and I don't think that this country, in as it is a multicultural society, and it's heavily this country here is really, I mean, it's inundated really with Asians. But even
Mm.
though it is multicultural, it's not ready for an Asian prime minister. I don't even think it's ready for a black prime minister. So yes, um, and I think you alluded to the fact also that it is said, I don't know if this is true, but it is said that he is the one that kind of put the knife in Boris for Boris to have vacated the position. And if you notice, and if you looked at the time when Liz Truss was chosen, I think that he was the better candidate, but because she was British and white, they decided to go with her. And I think it was quite telling also that when she, even though she was, let's say, sitting right beside Rishi, when
Mm.
her name was called to say that she was taking over or had become the leader of the Conservative Party, when she passed Rishi, she passed him as if he didn't exist.
Mm.
She shook everybody else's hand, never shook his hand at all. So I think these things are quite, we have to look at these things. And wishing, I'm sure, because there was nobody else per se that could have filled the position because he had run for it, that they could have chosen. They chose him as the next best thing to Liz, because there was nobody else.
Mm.
So that's my look on, or my take on things there.
But let me ask though, isn't Boris himself part Turkish?
E-
Well,
e-
well, he may be, and at the same time, he was not even born in this country, was he? I
He's
think
born
he
in
was
America, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
he was. So he's not even a British person. If you really want to get nitty gritty with things, he's not even British. He's an American.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
I suppose he's British. I don't think we can say he's not
y-
British. What
yeah,
we can say is that he has a heritage which includes not coming from your direct Anglo-Saxon
yes,
in its
yes.
purest form heritage. But then not even the monarchy is directly Anglo-Saxon in
Exactly.
its heritage
Yeah, they're
anyway. So
German.
well, there
Exactly.
you go. I mean, you've said it. So the question is not whether you're British. I think the question is whether you represent a Caucasian ilk. If we
Mm.
want to be quite honest about it, that seems to be most telling there.
True.
But
True. True.
but this whole thing now, talking about like Boris, and the heritage, and in Jamaica now, you're seeing a new shift whereby Mark Golding, who is the president of the opposition and also the opposition shadow minister for finance, and also a senator, Matthew Samuda, they've all declared that they're going to renounce their British citizenship, in light of that, they're aspiring to high office. Uh, one of the things that I do not know, and I should have done a check to see if a British prime minister have to be born. Well, actually, we have found out that Boris wasn't born in the UK. You know, I, like America, they have to be born in America. But in the UK, you don't have to be born
But
in the UK.
as far as I recall, Churchill was not born in the UK either.
There you are. So why is Jamaica giving it such a hard time then?
But that's a different story. That's a different story. The question is no, and I tell you what. I tell you what. And because to declare my own hand, I am of a view that says that you should have a singular allegiance and nationality and citizenship to serve in Jamaica. But part of the reason I say that, and when you ask why is Jamaica giving it such a hard time as compared to say the UK, the
Mm,
reality is that small states suffer differently from dual nationality than bigger states do. So if
mm,
you, for example, let's take me as an example. If I am a dual Jamaican British citizen, and if I
yes.
were to be in the UK and I were to be elected to serve as a member of parliament there, or even become prime minister, let's say, the chance of my acting in relation to the UK as though I am nothing else is much greater than if it were to be the other way around and I'm elected in Jamaica and still holding British thing, I still want to cleave to the UK much more so than I would here. So the
Yeah.
idea, for example, of a British prime minister being able to say, I have my home in Jamaica while serving as the British prime minister would be unheard of. But the
Mm,
likelihood of a prime minister in Jamaica or anybody saying I have my home in Hawaii or my residence and I really just fly in for meetings and the rest of it. It's a much greater possibility. And there are a number of factors related to those dynamics, which I think you have to be concerned about. And my great interest, of course, is always one which says that you should not be in a country where you make laws, implement them, and you're not prepared to suffer the good and bad consequences of them, including to have your children suffer the good and bad consequences of them.
Yes, yes,
That's for me something which has been the bane of our existence and continues to be because it's tantamount to that what I always speak about. The absentee farmer philosophy. Those absentee farmers who lived
mm,
in Yorkshire, Leeds, and all those places in Yorkshire, Leeds, Bradford, Leeds, and all of them, who kept their plantations here. They did not even show up except to have an overseer, made their money here, took it to England. Then you see the plaques at University of Cambridge and all the things to ensure that they got their name in British society. But they did very little here. And that continues to this day. And that is part of small. You'd never see the same going the other way around. You never would.
yes, yes. Well, well, ladies and gentlemen, and for those also on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, we're on 5 minutes to go before the polls close. Millions of people are voting or have voted in the UK. General election will with polls closed at 10 p.m. British Standard Time. Around 46 million voters are eligible to elect 650 MPs, and parties need at least 326 seats to form a majority government. 326 seats. Where do you think these 326 seats are going to come from? Chris and Gary, your predictions.
I have none. Take me out of this equation.
Gary, where do you think these 326 seats going to come from?
I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine where this is
Yeah.
concerned. Yeah.
It is very interesting. Someone was saying that Labour is going to get 200 seats, and 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 therefore what will happen is a situation where should there be a coalition, and Lib Dem, when they were talking to Lib Dem right throughout the time, Lib Dem say we're not thinking about that. Labour say we're not thinking about that as well. But of course, none of them has actually ruled it out in a sense. Some are saying that sorry, I'm looking at two different forecasts here at the same time. Exit poll imminent. I don't know why this is still going on the screen. I don't want to see these guys. They should be showing Laura Koonsberg. Maybe try to get Sky. Sky is showing the exit poll imminent, um, which is happening there at the same time. You know. So yes.
But
So very interesting.
I
Congress. Yeah.
tell you those Sylbourne, if I may. Politicians will say what they want because each side, Labour certainly wants an absolute majority to be able to rule,
Yes.
right? However,
Hmm.
we saw what, for example, happened in South Africa. Who would have ever thought that that coalition that we now see would have happened, would have ever happened?
Hang on. Are you saying the DP and the ANC gone into bed? Because I'm hearing otherwise. Is that the case?
But are they not in bed?
I'm I've got a South African mate who called me and said there's a lot of eruption which is going on there. Apparently, it's going to be Malumba and Zuma because
Yeah, but I'm
the
saying that all of that at the time he was selected president, right? Ramaphosa to continue. A number of things
Right.
happened. You know. The DA said they would not get into bed with ANC.
yes.
Maluma and Zuma said they would never be part of a government with Ramaphosa as president. And now we're
Mm,
seeing that they started out by using the DA to get there. They're having their issues now, and they could well find themselves now taking on those two. But let's say they take on Malema and Zuma. How do those two, who had categorically said they do not wish to be part of anything with Ramaphosa as
mm.
president, survive? What, whichever way it ends up settling, you still have a problem by reference to what was said prior.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I
therein
mean,
lies the
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
I mean, I think that Zuma, I mean, I heard something, was it today, to say that Zuma can't, because of what he was accused of, he can't hold, he can't be a sitting MP in South Africa. Is that
Yes.
so? Did you hear something like that?
That may
I've
well,
heard that one.
I'm not sure. I don't know what their rules are, frankly, on that. But what I would say is that more interesting things have happened in the past in all sorts of countries. And sometimes the interest of politics can take interesting turns. That is all I would say at this point. And I think what is clearly happening, I think, is that Ramaphosa having decided that they would take on board the DA. The DA is clearly making demands of them, which they know they could never entertain if they are to retain any level of credibility with black South Africans and the majority South African of the South African population. So they may well have to do things that they ordinarily would have preferred not to do, but which become politically expedient in the circumstances.
Okay, let me just play something here in a second.
Oh,
Oh
oh,
my God.
Here we go.
Wow.
yeah, I'm going. You can see.
Urge Reform
Just a
13.
second, you can see
Nice.
how Andy has
Wow,
reacted.
brilliant.
A Labour landslide.
That's a
and
super
then
majority.
Some.
Lib Dem
Conservatives
61.
on 131 seats. Labour 410 seats. The Lib Dems on 61 seats. What a campaign he has had.
Yes.
Ed Davey, as I was saying to the team just yesterday, his midlife crisis coinciding with this election campaign, and it looks like he's
Lib Dem
potentially
did a good job.
secured 61 seats for his party. As far as
But what is it
SNP
for
is
reform
concerned, I
though?
don't know how
What
you
is the
describe
reform
it in
number with the
Scotland,
13,
but say
13
Lancashire,
seats.
it looks
13.
as though they've been absolutely battered. And look at the numbers for reform, potentially up to 13 seats. That's where
Oh, wow.
some of the Conservative votes from last time will have gone. Beth Rigby, I was giving you a moment. Go.
Yeah, that is an incredible result. If you think that Starmer said he had to climb a mountain, he has scaled Everest there and taken off into orbit. Looking at that, that
26
is implied majority. If this
from
is correct,
410.
and it's only a
Got
prediction
84
of
over the amount.
170, it would be the second biggest Labour majority ever, only slightly behind Tony Blair in 1997. It is an incredible result when you think Labour in the last general election had its worst performance case since 1935. They were written off. They were consigned to perhaps a decade or more out of power. It is, I would say, a landmark moment. It's been half a century since any Labour leader won a majority, the last one being, of course, Tony Blair. There's a whole generation of people who won't be able to remember a Labour government, and that is a consequential win because Keir Starmer wanted a decade of renewal. He might have it.
Okay.
For the Tories, just to say, that's the worst performance ever. That is worse than Balfour in the Liberal line side in 1906. Look at reform. Look at Lib Dems. The subtext of this is not just the implosion of the Tories, but the rise of the other in this general election.
Let's see the reaction when we said Labour 410, a majority predicted of 170s. The Conservatives properly getting a drubbing. Reform, as Beth was saying, potentially on 13 seats. This is how our experts reacted when they first saw the landslide.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay. Well, of course, that's an exit poll, but it is more than likely a signal of what's going to be when the final counts come in. What's your take on that? Can you hear me, Gary?
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, I mean, it's not surprising. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, Sylbourne, we didn't know the numbers. We don't know the numbers. But
Yeah.
I think that we were expecting that kind of result. I think that's not a shock. And the Conservative Party is not in shock either, because they know exactly of what was going to happen. They may not have known the figures, but
Yes.
they know they're on the losing
Yes.
on the losing
Yes.
team.
Yes.
And
definitely the signs were on the wall, and but it was how much, and now the realization of the fact is, Chris, you're saying. I don't know if Chris is there. Yeah. Yes, Gary. So we're looking at, but what is it about reform? Reform has got 13 seats. That's fantastic, isn't it?
I think that's very good. I think
That's very good.
I
That's very good.
I mean, Nigel Farage, I think he's won his seat. Is that so?
We're not sure yet, but we'll see if he won that seat, Nigel Farage. I don't know if something is showing there. Exit poll cabinet big beast. They're trying to see who is gone, if anything. If any of the big guys are gone. Portsmouth North, Pennyman, okay, Penny. Okay, Braintree, James Cleverly. Okay, he hold that. Richmond, Richard Sunnock. I think he hold that. Big Beast, what's her name? What's her name? Kemi, I think she held that seat. They believe they held that seat. But what do you think about this 410 now? I mean, Labour can go in and do great and well, I don't know about fantastic things, but they can go ahead and do a lot of things now. God, this is bigger than what Boris had.
I mean,
but
Sylbourne, are you hearing me?
Yeah, Chris, I wasn't hearing you before, but no, I can hear you now. We couldn't hear you anything.
No, I was saying at the beginning, I said that
Yes.
if Rishi loses bigly, as a Trump word, right? Bigly, if he loses bigly.
Yeah.
Then I think he has some serious questions to answer. And if the exit polls hold, and as you said, the exit polls tend to be fairly correct, right? As to what final results are. Then I don't know what position Rishi can find himself in now, because I'm sure not only will he have to resign, but I'm sure he's going to have some people coming after him in a serious way, because what he did was simply stupid.
Yes. And rightly, of course, by tomorrow, more than likely, he will tender his resignation and then hold on while they go through this leadership thing. I in a way think that there should not be, I don't know, a rush for this yet, without, because what you're gonna, well, I guess the Conservatives are gonna go through a period of maybe different leadership for a while until they get settled in. And the opposition will remain still as the Conservatives still, but doing deals, and but Labour has a fantastic lead, and if the exit polls hold. But you're right about what you said. Rishi Sunak do have a lot of questions to ask as to why the election was pushed at this time, when there was no need for it, and getting his team and everybody in place, and a lot of good people may have, and that's why a lot of people have jumped ship, isn't it, Gary? A lot of Conservative bigwigs jumped ship before.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, that was telling. I mean, I don't think he should have. When you've got people like that jumping ship at a time when he doesn't need to call an election, but if he calls an election, obviously you're gonna get this kind of result.
But one of the interesting thing, though, as many Conservatives sort of know, is that after a while, sometimes you just got to stand back and have a break, have a rest. So maybe it's a rest period now, you know. And let Labour do what they have to do and hold them to the policies and to see how it unfolds. But it's many people say it's a new dawn. I know a few people say they are going to be drinking tonight as well, because the expectation. and it seems Gary and Chris, it seems like the polls have married the physical polls, if anything. I don't know how it worked out, but it seemed like it lines up.
Well, it seems that way. It
Yes.
seems. I don't know. I don't know how effective, because if you remember when the Conservatives won at one point, I think it was under Cameron, and they got this massive majority. They were saying that they need to be careful that having large majorities in Parliament can be a curse as well as it could have been a blessing.
Yes.
And I think that Labour needs to remember that and know that having a majority does not only mean that it's a good thing to have, but it could also be a very negative or a bad thing to receive if that is the case, you know.
Do you see the Labour Party leading for 5 years or 10 years?
If they play their cards right, and again, it's not even so much as playing cards right. It's about it's about what the other economies around the world, how they respond to what's happening in the world, because the Labour Party, as well as the Conservative, as well as Reformed, as well as the Lib Dems, they can always say what they will do. You know, when they get into government, they will do this, they will do that. And okay, that's probably what a lot of political parties around the world do also. But it's actually when they go in, it's actually when they begin to see what the situation is, that it's not as what they were hoping to be.
Well,
So
Herbert just came back from the polls, and he just voted the people. I mean,
well, Herbert, the responsibility, the reins of government is firmly in your hands. So Sylbourne and I are going to see what exactly you're going to do.
Yeah, what are you going to do, Herbert? What are you going to do?
Yeah,
Chris, is Chris there still?
That's true.
Go on. Keep talking.
Thou should not be a false prophet against thy neighbor.
No, well, you're a different type of neighbor. If you send me on top of your roof to go fix your area, I know I'm gonna come down and you put a different government in, and you expect me to live by that. Go on, man.
In the middle of Beryl. In the middle of Beryl, eh?
In the middle of Beryl, yes.
What's your take on the figure there, the exit polls, Herbert?
It's not surprising.
Mm.
It's not surprising because whether in life or death, nobody runs away from anything that is good or seems to be good. And for how long now, a decade and a half, the Conservatives have been kicking the can down the road, making promises. And promises made or promises not kept. You're going to find yourself in trouble.
Yes. Yes, let me see. Let me. I think Chris is. Wait, 1 second. Okay. 1 second. 1 second. Chris?
Yeah, man, I'm here. You might see me twice. If you do, just
Yeah,
Let's take
yes,
one up.
I saw it twice. I was thinking it was my eyes, but it's not my eyes.
Just
Yeah,
remove one. Yeah, but I was
Chris, how are
saying
you?
though that it's a yeah. I'm good. You know, how are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
yeah, you're saying Chris, yes.
No, I was saying it's telling. I'd wait to see what the final results are
Yes.
and to hear what the commentary is. I'm sure that within another hour or so, you will have both leaders, at least all of them, frankly, coming
Yes.
to do their own press statements and media interviews, and you will then see how Mr. Snack responds. I'm more interested in how he responds than I am in how Keir Starmer is going to respond. Quite
Yeah.
frankly,
Let
you
us
know.
hear. Let us hear what Redwood is saying. Let's hear what Redwood is saying.
Seat, so it's too early to speculate. I trust that Rishi Sunak wins his seat and he will carry on for an interim period while the party thinks through what it would like to do next. There will need to be a new chairman of the 1922 committee anyway, because the outgoing one has retired from Parliament. And that's quite an important post in these circumstances. There needs to be a leader of the new team of MPs assembling when Parliament meets, because they will have a very big role to play in deciding who's going to lead them going forwards, what kind of a party it's going to be, what lessons we learn from what is likely to be a bad defeat, and there will be a clash of ideas, because there's been a big argument about ideas going on over the last 5 years.
But John, when you see reform potential on 13 there, do you think the party needs to tack to the right with a future leader or stay in the centre ground?
I think it needs to tack to popular and credible beliefs that people will support. I don't think this right-left thing means very much. And I do think people responded badly to the inflation, to the failure to control our borders, and to the way that COVID was handled and the result.
I just have a different take on it, John. I mean, I remember the Conservative Party when I went into Parliament. It was a different party than this one that stood at this election. You've got to decide now whether you're a wholly owned subsidiary of Reform, because that's what you've become. And I think you're one of the people who've dragged it in that direction over the years. Sensible people were pushed out, pushed away. Ken Clarke, Rory Stewart, Theresa May. This is, you know, you may as well be Reform. And you should be owning this is the worst result in the history of the Conservative Party.
Sorry, we're nothing to do with Reform. And if
this is very interesting. That particular conversation there about the direction, and this is what many people are talking about: the direction of the Conservative Party with Reform, and its sort of sense of re-identifying themselves as to what they're about, because they've been one of the major fighting winning machine for a long time, but somehow it has gone, or it went. Will it be gained? Yeah.
Well, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing and what we could have done, or what they could have done, or what they should have done. But when the dust is cleared, it will be seen by all that John Public was not well served by the outgoing administration. Right? So they need to look at their policies and get ready for the next election.
Yeah. What do you think then now that people are actually saying, Guy? What are people now saying? Because there's always a message from outcome of elections. When there was Lib Dem and Conservative at that coalition, there was a saying from the people, or what the punters say, or the political analysis says, that they do not trust one to do everything. They need people to work together. What is this saying now with the shift towards Labour? 410 seats, i.e. exit. What is it saying? What are the people then saying now? And I'll go to Gary and then go to Chris, and then before we wrap up, and then Herbert.
What are the people saying? What's the constituency saying? No.
What are people saying? What is the nation saying? What is the nation saying based on this election and based on the outcome? the bigger
Well,
picture, not yeah.
Well, I mean, looking, if we have to look at what the exit polls are saying now, Sil, the country now is saying they need change. There needs to be different direction. And the Labour Party, now this puts a great responsibility on the Labour Party, because if they don't do what they say they're going to do, then they're not going to be in there for the next 4 or 5 years. They've got a great big responsibility now. This is what this majority is saying. You've got the responsibility to take the country out of the problems and out of the situation. And I personally, and then I will shut up, I don't think Labour Party has it at all.
Yes.
So I'm not saying the Conservative Party has, but the Labour Party certainly.
Yeah. Chris, from your perspective, from the outside looking.
I think, there's a sense, certainly here in Jamaica, that parties tend to lose elections more so than the other winning. But I think the clear message here is that Labour won. Yes. The Conservatives lost, but Labour won this election. And what it says to me clearly, and we have to now make it leader-centric in what I'm about to say, that for all his bluster and for whatever Rishi may have done, good or bad, it is clear that the people did not buy into him, buy into his message, or buy into his level of performance. They simply determined that he was not up for the job. There was need for change, and that change should not be one to give him his own mandate, but to instead move to something else to say, we do not want you to be our leader going forward. We have seen you, we have tried you, we have tested you, albeit for a short period, but that period has given us enough to say, ta-ta, goodbye, have a good life doing something else.
Bon voyage. Yes. Herbert?
It can also be argued that he inherited garbage. Right? Because if you're going to use Boris Johnson as a role model, I'm sorry, you're walking behind Stevie Wonder.
Is it like what somebody said? Send a message to me saying mudslide.
No, that's not mudslide. That's a whole slide. The whole slid away from him.
Okay, a big Beryl.
Right, and you cannot inherit garbage and expect a miracle to happen in a short space of time. Right, bearing in mind that he was also a part of the garbage.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because if he was not in support of the Prime Minister then, he should have come out long ago and said something. People would have had more faith in him. Right? Than the politicians.
Yeah. Apparently, the Chancellor apparently may have lost his seat as well. Jeremy Hunt to Lib Dem. Yes. Yeah. Let's hear what what's his name is actually saying. Here, we're going to wrap up shortly.
Given that he's going to win here, his majority is 27,000 or so, 64% of the vote last time. So he should win here. But the exit poll predicting great things nationally means that Keir Starmer, former human rights lawyer, former director of public prosecutions, leader of the Labour Party for 4 years or so, is going to walk into this building in a matter of hours, knowing full well that his life and the life of his family is about to change in the most dramatic way. Labour Party members have already been celebrating here as your exit poll went up there. And here they are receiving the news from the Sky News exit poll. Tamara Cohen is with me. So, well, a good night for them, and certainly a big night for Keir Starmer.
Absolutely. We will see Keir Starmer here at this count for the first time tonight, walking in here in the knowledge that he is almost certainly going to be Britain's next Prime Minister. After all these weeks of campaigning where you felt every day that Labour couldn't quite believe that it was happening, they now know almost for certain that they have won a landslide majority of the order that no one has since Tony Blair won one from opposition 27 years ago now. And they've seen a Conservative implosion that we can see in those opinion polls there. And he will be coming here to thank the people who have voted for him to put him in this position, but also we'll be talking no doubt about the job he has done in transforming the party. We heard tonight from Pat McFadden, who's been a close ally of Keir Starmer, has been coordinating the campaign, and he says the transformation of the party since he took it over, having had its most devastating defeat for 80 years. He took it over when a lot of people said it will be the work of many, many years to get them back into contention. He has turned it around in just 5 years, and now the hard work of governing will begin. I think we'll get a sense of that when he appears here tonight.
Well, yeah. Well, gentlemen, we have seen the. All I can say is congratulations to Sir Keir Starmer as the next Prime Minister of the UK, and he did a fantastic job. What should I say? Galvanizing his party, and one of the things he has said is that he went in to change it around. And he makes reference to the bits like when it comes on to the Diana Butt bit and those other bits there, he tried to stay away from it at the same time, but was down a particular path to deal with anti-Semitism and all those sort of things, you know. So one can say that he was very, very tactical in what he did.
No, but I don't. But no, Sylbourne. No, I don't think he did anything.
You don't think he did anything?
No, the Conservative Party did that for him.
Okay. so what you're actually saying is that he won by default of the Conservative loss, the Conservative messing up.
Yeah, I mean, if the Conservative Party did not perform how they have performed in the past couple of years, then the Labour Party wouldn't have had it so easy.
Yes.
I don't know if my friend Herbert would agree with that. He looks a bit.
Well, it doesn't take a lot to damage a little bit of legacy that you had, right? And sometimes, as a people or as organizations, we get complacent in the position in which we find ourselves, right? We get complacent. We become too cocky, as if we were born to be in certain positions and we can't lose it.
Right.
And we do things otherwise or in a roundabout way than what people had expected us to do or expected them to do. And they've seen the result of it tonight.
Will this sort of replicate in Jamaica?
Well, Jamaica is going down the road of I would say autocracy. Right? And if we're not careful, we hear the Prime Minister talking about the ultimate leader.
Yes.
Right? Now, how does he define the ultimate leader? It's left to one's interpretation. Right?
Yes.
But I do not think the election will be even close in Jamaica.
Okay.
And when I say even close, you will not have that that colorless sweep that they had in 2020.
Yes. Well, gentlemen, Chris, are you there still, Chris? Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thanks and good night for joining us for this segment of the show where we sort of usher in the results of the elections for the UK. And ladies and gentlemen, the outcome of the election in Jamaica, UK, regarding the exit poll is 410 for Labour, 131 for the Conservative, 61 for Lib Dems, 13 for Reform, which is a breakthrough, SNP at 10, and other 25. It's very interesting to see the other as to how much, if there's anything from the Scottish Party, Labour or Conservative Scottish in that 25, and also the Welsh as well when we sort of break it down as well. in that it's a new day, it's a new horizon for the UK, and let's see how it translates, Gary. Let's see how it translates into the lives of persons. Chris, any last word before you go, sir? And yeah.
No, we wait and we see, and then we do the analysis subsequent. But I think there's a message that has been sent, and I think we all, wherever we find ourselves, need to see the move of the people, the mood of the people.
Yes.
See how they are responding to their desire for change, and understand that with the best of intention, a few of us sitting in our rooms, wherever we find ourselves, will not change the views of people if they come out. What was amazing here, and I think it's the analysis that we haven't heard yet, is that I understand that it was a very large voter turnout. And if there was a large voter turnout, which yielded this result, it is even more telling that the people decided that they needed to come out to vote Labour. Exactly. And that is critical.
Yes. So therefore, what we are seeing is that it is not like the Conservatives maybe did not turn up. It is the voters actually turn out to actually vote the Conservative out.
Indeed,
Yes?
indeed.
Okay. Very interesting. As you rightly say, Chris, there's going to be the analysis to see the turnout, because you and I spoke earlier about the fact that there seemed to have been an increase, and the increase, it can go both ways, but it seemed that the increase went for the opposition, anything to say that they want that change. And I believe one of the things that came out though is that politicians need to listen to their masters. They need to listen to the people. And what this is actually saying is that the people hold the power, and the people can vote them out at the same time in the next 4 to 5 years as well. So they need to listen to what the people are actually saying. And many a times, politicians, when they knock on the doors, and I keep saying this all the while, they knock on the door, you say, I'm the man, I'm going to do this. And trust me, guys, they never ever say anything negative or what the people don't want to hear. They're going to say all the good things, what we're going to do. And then when they go into power, circumstances, whatever, they don't deliver. It's like what happened with the Lib Dems, the time with the coalition, when they renege on their promise regarding education, and so therefore this is a message now that I'm getting a feedback. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Yes.
Sylbourne,
yes.
when's the last time
that's
you
it.
went to the fish market?
That's what I said. Yeah. Sorry.
When's the last time you went to the fish market?
Sorry. To the fish market.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're saying. Those are tricky questions, and I don't want to answer those tricky questions. I don't want to answer those tricky questions.
But no, man, don't the fisherman always tell us say fish is fresh, always fresh.
Okay. Yes. Go on.
Yeah. Until you reach away touch it, you found it's not really a fresh fish as you thought it was.
Yeah.
Then why can't you understand the politician then?
Why can't we understand the politicians? What do you mean?
Yes, why can't you understand the politician that everything that is coming is fresh ideas, his ideas, and they must be fulfilled until they get into the Houses of Parliament.
And he realized that it is not.
It is perfect.
So, what are you saying there then? I think I understand what you're saying there, but what are you trying to say then when it comes on to manifestos and policies and then the reality?
Sometimes it is not worth the paper it is written on. Because us as a people, sometimes we do not vote for policies. Chris said it earlier, right? We vote for the people and not the policies. We've always been saying this, Sylbourne.
Personalities.
And that is where we get hurt all the time. All the time. So let us wait and see what this 410 majority will bring to the table. Other than the chair that they will be sitting on around the table.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. Gary, last word.
Well, I will echo the same sentiment as Herbert echoed. Let's see what it is that will bring. We hope them. We hope them the best. Why? Because if they trust, then you, Herbert, and myself, we will succeed because we are here.
Yes.
If they badly and things don't work out for them, then we're going to feel the brunt of it, really.
Yes. Okay. Well, have a good night, good sleep, and we touch a base. We touched on Jamaica regarding the recent Hurricane Beryl, and in our discussion earlier, we'll see more of the assessments as it comes out, and we'll see at the same time how much help that Jamaica will need, and normally the diaspora also plays a fundamental part in that as well. All right. Okay. Peace out.
Bless you.
Bert, take care. Take care, Chris. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Chris, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
All right. Cheers, man. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. I want to thank you so much for joining. Those on Facebook, those on YouTube, and those on TikTok. Thank you. And there's a new era, a new government in the UK. And yep, congratulations to Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. And commiseration to the Conservative. Thank you very much. Peace out and bye-bye. And congratulations also to Mr. Nigel Farage as well. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.